that song. I have not heard the song, and I just randomly picked it. But there's
Everybody cry.
there's ice on the cover art, which I think is a bad sign.
My heart is frozen. Everybody has a.
Oh my God.
Wow.
It's Team America, guys. That was the musical in
Sure.
Team America.
I wonder how that movie has aged. Probably not very well.
Oh, I'm sure it's extremely well. A movie that makes fun of America's belligerence and sometimes enthusiasm and sometimes trying to do the right thing while destroying the things that they're trying to protect. Not at all relevant today, Bryce. Not at all.
Well, they don't even have the right Kim Jong Un, the right Kim Jong either.
Yeah, like you can tell the difference.
Yeah, you can ADR that. CGI a few extra pounds on the puppet.
Because their regimes are so dramatically different, Bryce.
In your heart there's a beating. Sometimes I think that I can feel it. It keeps my time.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Monday.
Oh man, we're here. We're trying to give everybody else is taking today off,
Yeah.
including me for all my other projects, but weird things. Brian is under the weather, as you can see.
That's right. He's finally looking skinnier though, which is
Oh God damn it! You beat me to the, to the joke. I was gonna say Brian's finally hit his ideal weight.
Great minds, Justin. Great minds.
Brian finally looks into the mirror and sees something he likes. Alexa, what's the time in Sydney?
4 a.m.
It's already 4 o'clock in the morning.
Nice.
I like how mine answered it too.
I want everybody to know.
Yeah. Everybody needs to know Brian time.
Bri time,
Bri
yeah.
time. The Bri
I guess,
zone.
did they already have a meetup, or are they going to have a meetup?
Are there? Yeah, I don't know if there were meetup planned.
I just saw, but you never know.
Oh.
Now that Twitter puts random like tweets in your feed, and with between that and the time change, I don't really know.
Oh,
Well,
I
and it's like
get Instagram, and like I get like Throwback Thursdays on Sunday.
yeah. Right?
Like this algorithm's like, I don't know. I'm just disoriented. What day is it?
Tuesday night. So in
All right, so that's
in about
coming up.
16 hours, I think.
So you can still join Brian. Well, I don't know why you're up listening to us at 4:30 in the morning.
Third shift, Justin. Third shift.
All right, so all third shift Australians, go get to sleep. Meet up with Brian later today.
Yeah. Which is Tuesday, not Monday. I know I said Monday about 10 minutes ago, but it is Tuesday over there.
It's Monday here in the States,
That's right.
as everybody outside of the United States calls it.
Let's see. Also, there's probably a little bit of time left on this bigscamstuff.com sale. Brian's not here, so I'm just going to get this plug out of the way so it's not in just so it's out in the ether. I'm secreting it.
Oh. Yep.
Sounded like that Red Letter Media guy.
Yeah. I accidentally clicked-
The guy. Move
Hey.
I was watching. I was on Twitch looking at random streamers for the past day or two, and I was watching this one guy, and I kind of liked him. I ended up watching the rest of his stream, and then he was done or he clicked off it, whatever, and I looked him up, and he's one of those guys that makes like those sins videos, like gaming sins, like
Oh,
kinda
like cinema sins,
like
and shit
cinema
like that.
sins, yeah. It's like, well, I don't know. It was a weird thing because his stream wasn't like,
Yeah.
just a weird thing.
All
Uh,
right. We ready to roll?
Yeah, I'm good to go. You good to go, Andrew? I got your link. I did not look too much at it, but I don't know that.
Yeah. Let me just finish my notes.
Sure. Finish up your notes. I know when I was doing the show, it helped me a lot to have at least a little notepad of talking points.
Oh, I do that for every show. I've got my notepads going back from ever since I started doing this show. I have like my little weird thingy list. I just type in WT and the date, and so I wonder if just out of curiosity, how many pop up?
Sure.
Yeah, wow. I gotta. I want to share the screen, but I've got like just this endless list. How far does these go back? 2014.
Oh, I was about to say you have 2,000. You guys didn't do 2,000 episodes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh no, I've
2014
got
though.
them going back to the 12.
12. Okay,
Yeah.
6 years.
Yeah, because that's just me using the WT nomenclature to do that. So yeah, I've got. I should just like pull up old shows and not see if anybody notices that like we're like, oh, let's talk about this.
Yeah. This week, Donald Rumsfeld is in the news this week. No.
Yeah. All right, I'm good.
You good? All right.
Yep.
Then, take it away, Andrew, in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Weird Things Podcast. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Justin Robert Young.
Oh, hello, friends, and a pleasant Memorial Day to ye.
To ye?
To
To
ye.
ye.
And that other voice you hear is our producer extraordinaire, the third member of the team, Bryce Castillo.
I thought you were going to say the third wheel, and I was going to agree with that. Hi, everybody. Welcome.
No.
Happy Memorial Day.
Bryce, you are the axle. You are the chassis upon which these wheels spin.
Yes, the chassis of our vehicle, our dream car, is Bryce.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I don't know if you've noticed that you could take Brian, Justin, or me out of the show,
Yeah.
and it runs. When
Yeah.
you're not here, not so smooth.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm flattered.
So, gentlemen, I'm really upset at Brian.
He's not even here.
I know.
Yeah,
that's why I'm
Brian,
upset.
actually, can you go to
because,
the live shot of Brian?
Yeah, I
right
mean,
now?
look at him. He's
If
gone
there-
to. He's wasting away.
if there was ever a case for Spiro and the Fudge, it's this one coming up right now.
Oh no.
Oh man.
Yeah,
All right,
but
well, I could try to do both.
Well, I could be I could take speed. I could be.
You want a Spiro? You want to? Oh no, or he?
I'll be.
Are you the Fudge?
I think you're the Fudge.
I'm the Fudge.
I'll be Crash Bandicoot. The other Spyro. Never mind. It's going great.
okay. No, we could be. You could be like the second season replacement of Spiro. So
Yeah.
it could be, Agnew.
Let's
Agnew.
let's just invent similar archetypes with different names, like when Garfield had Heathcliff at the end. Like let's just give you the kind of the same thing but with slightly different flavors. So it'll be Sinclair and Sherbert, and I'll be Sherbert.
Okay. I'll be Sinclair. That's great.
All right. So, gentlemen, got a problem.
All right.
I'm a Montana rancher, in case you haven't noticed, and I done shot something, and nobody there talks like that, but I'm just gonna do that anyways. I shot something in my backyard, and I need your advice. It's why I called you in.
Oh, you shot. Well, are you worried about what you shot?
Oh
Hey, wait,
yeah.
Whoa,
yeah.
whoa. Hold on, sir. Thank you for your comment. We'll be back in a second.
Oh, that's right. We
All
have
right.
to- yeah.
Sinclair,
What's up, Sherbert?
I think it's pretty obvious that this guy murdered somebody. So what do you say let's just right now, I want you to dial 91 on your phone,
Sure.
or maybe even 911, right? And then just wait to hit,
The
just
call
keep your
button.
finger, phone in the pocket, put your finger over where you're assuming the send button would be. All right.
Okay.
So take a second right now, look at your phone, memorize where the send button is. 911.
Got it
show
right.
that on the screen.
Hey, just so you know, I think I may have murdered somebody.
Oh no, that's a confession too, Sherbert. We
Oh,
should
Well,
have
not
had
intentionally.
that's still manslaughter.
A likely story. All right, just
Well,
finger
I
over
believe
the
you're-
green button.
I got it.
All right, yeah, sir. You know, in all my years of sleuthing, I'm gonna try and blend in with him, Sinclair.
Okay.
Hey, y'all! In all my years of getting to the bottom of this haystack, I've found that there ain't no substituting a good eyeballing. Why don't you say you reckon you bring that old carcass on over here so we might train our peepers on it?
Well, surely, but first you need to know my backstory. You know, I decided to open up my own preserves, my own locally grown, canned foods, things like this store in Williamsburg, New York. But all those hipsters really got to me.
Fine.
So,
Yeah, with their
I took all my
bow tie.
LPs,
Yeah.
And my Klosterman novels, and I came out here to kind of get away from all of that. Like, ugh, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, certainly so, I reckon.
Yeah, and I do 3 podcasts a day too, by the way. One on denim. It's really, really good. You should check that out.
Oh, I should.
The locals, you think they'd be more into a denim podcast, but
I mean, that's
No culture.
salt of the earth. God don't make them like they made us anymore, huh?
true.
You're always ignoring flyover country.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Main
It's a shame.
Street,
Try to
not
show
Wall
people their
Street, right, my brother? All right.
So I was minding my own business, outside here reading Harper's, and my shotgun across my lap,
Sure.
and then I saw something kind of disturbing, something that was coming at me, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe it's that person I had that flame war with on Twitter. Who knows? I mean, really, if you want to make your own statement about a corduroy jacket, that's fine, but I'm going to tell you that you're wrong, that you're very, very wrong. And I was reading the latest think piece in Huffington Post, too, which really got me kind of in an agitated mood. And I saw this thing coming forward me, and I was worried for my personal protection. Now I'm against guns. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely against guns. But for my own personal protection, I do have one.
Sure. I mean, you
I'm
gotta
not happy
have
with that
one.
contradiction.
Sure.
with me?
Well, we all, when we look into the mirror that is life, sometimes our reflection is a bit askew. And I take a piece of straw and I put it in my mouth and I try to angle myself against the sun so I can light a cigarette like the Marlboro Man.
You understand what I'm saying. So anyhow, you never know. Like, the locals here haven't quite been receptive to me. Maybe it's because of my subscription to the Atlantic. I'm not quite sure, I was afraid for my life. I fired into the trees. And then I found this.
Wow.
All right. Well, it appears, if I'm to be drawn
Let me
some
lift up this
conclusions
tarp
that-
here, by the way. I made it myself from hemp.
Sorry, one more time.
I'm lifting my hemp tarp to show you the body.
His
the hemp tarp. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, Sinclair, huddle up real quick before
Sure.
we get this reveal.
Sinclair, you have the image ready, right?
Yes.
So if I'm to be believed here, oh wait, I can drop the accent. Jeez.
Yeah, you're good at that accent. Are you groundlings?
Can you believe how dumb these rubes are from out here in the sticks? Jeez.
Williamsburg.
All right.
We know
So-
where you hang your hat, sir. We're having a huddle.
I mean, come on.
You need my trucker hat? I got 20 just like it.
Williamsburg is so 10 years ago. It might as well be Montana.
That's why I left.
All right. Let's
Please,
try to
sir.
keep
This
our voice
is
down.
supposed to be a huddle.
So, it seems as if that this hipster immigrant got himself all riled up reading Harper's Bazaar, and amongst all the frightening tales of climate change and constitutional crises and whatnot, he got a little trigger happy and might have murdered somebody trying to, I don't know, maybe getting him on the Publishers Clearinghouse or solicit a donation for a local wildlife preserve.
Yeah, well, he seems so unsure of it is the only thing. I mean, he has a hemp tarp. He's, I guess, sewn a very nice hemp tarp. You'd think he would be someone who is acute of detail.
Well, did you know that hemp would have been made more legal if it weren't for the DuPont Corporation lobbying the government?
Okay, now, Sherbert, we don't need to get into your hemp rant.
I'm just saying. Stronger than most fibers that's commercially available. It would have totally destroyed the industry. Let's go ahead. All right.
Let's take a
sir,
look.
Do me a favor and 3, 2, 1, move that tarp.
Now, before I move it, I should I warn you that ever since John Voight moved to the neighborhood, I really have felt that Williamsburg really is in decline.
Okay, here's what's under the tarp. Oh my goodness! I mean, this looks like this just looks like a big dog.
Werewolf.
Well, I mean, so it appears this is a gigantic, either like a dog, or it almost looks like kind of direwolf size, like from Game of Thrones, like it bigger than a regular wolf, like almost big enough that a human could ride on it.
I don't see any eyes. You would think from this angle you should at least see part of an eye, or at least like the flap of a closed eye.
There are eyes if you go look to keep moving.
Oh, on the other
left.
side of the tarp? Sure.
No, yeah, there are eyes. You're just looking at the wrong angle.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it appears, sir, that you shot a wolf or a dog. Case closed.
So what we're looking at is
Holy
a very
crap, this thing is
strange.
gigantic.
It's his paw is about the size of like the central part of this gentleman's palm, the sans digits. Huge.
That's gigantic.
So the story on this was a rancher near the town of Denton killed the animal on May 16th when it ventured within several hundred yards of his livestock. He then reported to the Fish and Wildlife and Parks in accordance with the law. Now, because it was close to his house and his animals, he was within his rights to shoot it. Wolves are native to the area, so that's what they thought it was at first. But then the department's wolf experts looked at the photos of it, and they're like, something's not right about the animal, quote, a spokesman for the department said in a video. It does not look like a wild wolf.
Well, what's beyond wolf? I mean, if he was saying that it
Beyond Wolf, show title.
Yeah. Ooh, baby, that's not a wild wolf.
I mean, if
That hasn't stopped the internet from speculating.
Yeah.
The cryptid community is about the possibility of a dog man or a dog woman or an extinct member of the direwolf species. You know, those sober, analytical, objective loving people in the cryptid communities.
I mean, it almost looks like it has. I don't know if it's just because its fur is really dirty and matted, but it almost looks like a bear a little bit. I guess that could be.
Bryce says wolf bear hybrid.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is also dogs are in general really the like most valuable player of the cryptid world, right? Because dogs get mangy and hairless and they look like a million different things. So if this is not a wolf, what makes it not a wolf, I guess, according to the experts?
So for people saying, have they heard of DNA? Yeah, it's not like movies or TV like CSI where they're like, oh, we'll just DNA test this right now. In the real world, things take time. You have to send samples off to laboratories and, you know, it can take a while to do that.
Especially
so
for
they're doing DNA testing.
Yeah, just to give you a sense, in stories that I've covered where deaths are involved and toxicology reports are taken to determine the cause of death, that can very regularly take over a month and a half. Like, this is not something where you just swab a mouth and you know, enter it into an app and then it spits it right back at you. Like, these lab testings, because they want to be sure, oftentimes take a long time.
So I hope I'm not jumping the gun in this article here, Andrew. But they're saying that this would not be the first wolf-dog hybrid that they've had in this area.
So it could. That's the theory, is that it could be a wolf and some species of dog, and it's a hybrid. That's probably the best theory. And they've had wolf-dog hybrids that then, you know, they eat their sheep, whatever. They're hungry, and they just go out there and do their thing. So that could be what it is that it's, you know, some sort of hybrid of that. Probably the most likely.
This is
or
crazy.
wolf-human hybrid. You know.
This is from ScienceAlert.com. Dog-wolf hybrids are mainly produced in captivity and are supposed to be registered with a tattoo since they can be unpredictable. Although it's rare because wolves are so territorial, this kind of crossbreed could occur in the wild. Wow. I guess I never figured that if you were getting into the hybridization game, you would have to essentially brand the offspring because it would need to be identified quickly.
Yeah, because because a wolf dog hybrid looks remarkably a lot like a wolf.
Yeah.
You know, on first glance, is you want to make sure that, like, if somebody shoots it, whatever, you're able to, like, oh, this was a hybrid or whatever. We can identify this, you know, if you catch it or whatever, because do you have a wolf or do you have a dog wolf?
Right.
Holy crap. So what would you do if you, I mean, I guess you'd be pretty pumped that you shot it, right? like that thing looks like it's a killer.
Strap that to the front of my Volvo and drive all around town.
The front.
It looks like one of those wild ass animals that, you know, you would take off its head and coat and wear it around for the wild rumpus.
Yeah.
It looks like a prop from, like, a werewolf movie where they'd kind of like, yeah, I guess it works. It's not quite wolf-like, guys. It looks a little too thick around the neck and all right, we won't linger on the shot.
This is their first try at the.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's big enough that you could even make like a small like runner, like a small carpet, a little rug out of it. Like not a full size like bear.
Bryce, I want you from now on. The meme on this show has to be you describing all animals by how big of a rug they'd be able to make.
Okay.
Like, I'm just talking about, like,
Sure.
maybe bathroom mat to full, room rug.
Sure. Well, if you ask me, I think this one is probably a little runner, something you'd put in the foyer of your house to greet people, but it's not ostentatious.
It's not a showpiece per se. It's just a nice little accent.
Yeah. Wow. So they have no idea yet of what this thing is, but I guess we might know soon.
Yeah, I think once they do DNA, you know, that will resolve it. But it's, you know, while you wait for the DNA, becomes the mystery game of what are we looking at.
I also wonder how much they have in their budget to DNA test stuff. You know, like a Fish and Wildlife.
Well, yes, but they do. That is kind of a routine. DNA testing is what they do a lot now in poaching and other things like this, and it's one of the. It's a thing that they do. They work with certain labs to be able to do that, but.
This says here it may be months before they get an answer for it, so it could be a thing where, you know, they can afford to do it, but there's no need to rush it because the thing's already dead.
I'm going to send you this is a graphic we've used before. I don't know if you guys remember this, but I'm going to send this to you, Bryce, because I want to show you that one of the problems in trying to categorize things like this, particularly if you get hybrids and stuff, it makes it even more complicated. And if you want to throw that up on the screen.
Sure, we're looking at these look like.
Don't call what they are.
Okay.
And we're going to keep that. All right, Justin, take a look there.
Uh-huh.
How closely related would you say those species were? Or
wow,
same animal?
I mean, they look almost identical.
Okay.
You know, there's maybe like a few differences in some of the contours of the bones. We're looking at a skull in different angles from it, but the top-down angles look almost identical, and the teeth structure looks similar. I would say that these are closely related, very, very closely related animals.
So what we're looking at, and again, you know, it's to show you, this is just looking at bones. And that's one of the problems that going back and having only one factor to look at an animal to try to understand the difference to. One on the right is a wolf, timber wolf. The one on the left is a Tasmanian tiger, a thylacine, okay, or Tasmanian wolf, which is a marsupial, okay?
What?
Now, marsupials separated from, you know, the same, our ancestors as far as the line in the different mammalian lines, you know, that's like 30 million years ago. Okay.
But these look remarkably similar in these various skull fragments.
We're more closely related to the wolf on the right. We are more closely related to the wolf on the right.
Humans are.
Horses are more dolphins, you know. remember dolphins, we're more closely related to a dolphin than a wolf is to that thing on the left.
Wow.
And that's because what happened is when we had that branch and that mammal branch, marsupials, they think, mammals with pouches and mammals without pouches, split apart. Everything that we have going back to that point that don't have a pouch or whatever, we have a share common ancestors with. Yet because the Tasmanian wolf and the timber wolf, we use the same term wolf interchangeably because they look alike, but they are evolutionary speaking tens of millions of years apart. But what happened was they adapted to very similar environments, similar like heights of grass, trying to find little prey. There are marsupial versions of mice and rats that they would hunt. And so they hunted the same creatures. They had very, very same environments, but slightly different, yet they evolved to look a lot alike. It's like deer and kangaroo. Kangaroo and deer morphologically are very different, but they fill similar niches. And they're large, big nuisances, to some people.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Wow.
So, convergent evolution is very interesting where you look at something that's like, how did this thing happen? And you roll back the clock back in time, change things up a little bit differently and completely different results, but sometimes things fail. You see that in the ocean a lot. You see, species mimicry is one thing where something tries to look like something else, but other times it solves the same problem.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what's not a nuisance. You guys supporting us on patreon.com/weirdthings. That is where you can go ahead and kick us a few dollars. Make sure that we keep the weird flowing. And if you are a patron, well, guess what, man? You're going to get your own audio RSS link. That's something that you can plug right into the podcatcher of your choice. You use the Apple podcatcher, you use the Google one, you use any of the private ones. It's just so easy. You hit add, and then you just paste in that RSS feed, and boom, not only do you get directly the first possible feed of our podcast, but also you get After Things, which we do after Weird Things, where we talk about creativity and business and all sorts of other stuff that I think a lot of people who dig this show really get a big kick out of. So join us, won't you? Patreon.com/weirdthing.
And I think it's understated how easy it is to use this RSS link. A lot of times if you get a private one, you have to log in and you have to have on your podcatcher. It has to be built to log you into private RSS feeds. This is a bespoke link that is only for you. You don't have to worry about logging in, which is a
pain in the butt.
It's a real pain. So
super easy. Just copy. It's literally, you can do it on your mobile phone. You just copy that link and paste it right into the app. You don't need to worry about nothing.
That's right.
Gentlemen, let's talk about something maybe we do have to worry about.
Uh-oh.
AI can't solve everything.
What?
No, why not?
Well,
can it solve Lonely Heart?
Can it rank the best ice cream flavors at TCBY?
Well, no, and I'm going to tell you why. There's a paper that came out in The Conversation, and it's been reprinted elsewhere by Vyacheslav Polonsky from the University of Oxford, and he's making this claim hey, there's a lot of excitement about AI. AI is going to do this, AI is going to do that, and he's like, hey, settle down, everybody. AI can't do everything. And he's pointed out hey, they tried to use algorithms in courts to help with sentencing. They found out that it amplified structural racial indiscrimination. Okay. He shows, lists some other examples where AI was supposed to help, but it didn't. It failed.
And that's a case of
Facebook tried to use it, to prevent the spread of misinformation, and it failed.
And that's a lot of a case of it extrapolating on reported outcomes and not necessarily ideal outcomes or ideal structures, right? I mean, I would assume that it, in terms of the judicial system one, where if it's basing it off of history and not the ideal outcome of say objective justice.
Well, yeah, and I don't know that resolution, what they had, what came out of there, I don't know that it's not debatable as far as was it better or worse than. But the article makes a point that in one way I would say that, like, well, yeah, of course, it can't do everything now because you've got to ask the right questions and have the right data. If you don't have the right data, like a human trying to make decisions, some people are going to be better than others because they have more information or they're better at using it. And I think that was sort of the thing that kind of the article didn't really get into. And sort of here, there was another book came out, MIT Press released this one, and this woman's talking about, like, hey, technology's not everything we thought it was supposed to be, and I prefer to fill out a form by hand kind of thing. And it's like, I don't. But you get this sort of like, hey, it hasn't solved everything yet. It's like, well,
yeah,
it doesn't work.
We're not at that
well,
point.
my car can't make me a cup of espresso, so throw it in the garbage.
Yeah, and I think that it's brings up, it's sort of this point where you have this exciting promise of a technology. The problem is the technology is not this isolated thing that one day it arrives and it solves all the problems. It's how you use a thing. There's a lot of amazing things we can do with computers and computation, but we're not doing them. And often too, we've talked about this before, like, well, Facebook was trying to use AI to filter stuff. Like, well, one, it's Facebook trying to solve the problem, and to what end? Facebook tries to create posts or promote posts that will get you to interact more with Facebook. But if Facebook says, oh, yeah, the best way to do this is to get rid of 90% of the things our algorithm wants you to look at, not a good solution.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and it also creates what I think we're seeing a lot of now, which is people bristling at posts being auto-removed or accounts being kind of shadow banned, like, so things don't appear as they would otherwise because it's flagged as troubling or problematic. And ultimately, I think we're driving at kind of the same point of, hey, look, these things are, again, they're only as good. These are only as good as we are able to feed it data. Like this is at this point with all these AI advancements, they are only as good as our cooperation with them in determining what we want it to solve and how we are going about solving it, and really what we want out of it. Because that's another thing, is like, a lot of times when we talk about, specifically, to go back to the social media example, the drive, get bad things off our platform, seems simple, right? But we all know that is far more complicated to do than we would think. It's not what is bad to some is not bad to others.
And what's tough about machine learning, assuming that we're kind of folding machine learning as a term into this, is that it needs a lot of live data. I mean, YouTube has been in the I don't know. YouTube's been messing up a lot lately, quote unquote messing up, because their algorithm is working live. It is constantly making adjustments to what is and isn't promoted, what is and isn't shown to people. And you have to have these live reactions so that you can get real responses and outcomes from users and the developers.
Well, that's a very good example, because, like, I'll get, like, YouTube will recommend, check this out, and they're complete garbage. And garbage to me because, it's a shot, it's this frame grab for this next video is a girl in a bikini, and they know, like, hey, he likes girls, let's throw this here. And then it's this other thing, this the 5 things about Elon Musk you don't blank, and it's this clickbaity whatever kinds of things, because YouTube's goal, like Facebook, is we want you to stay in there and keep watching stuff. And so we're going to try to poke you. We're going to try to poke your little neurons. We're going to try to find that thing that gets you to respond. And that's the business model. I get it. That's what they're supposed to do. But then it's this, now, they had a problem where it looked like, appeared to be that YouTube was like, you would start off with, one sort of outside of center point of view on a video, and then it recommends another one, and then 20 videos later you're like, wow, maybe I should sign up for ISIS. It
would keep pushing you further and further to the extremes.
Yeah, exactly. That they look at how it can very easily let people, and I think the big problem came into is it's the algorithm. Is the once we got into this algorithm sort of thing that was designed to keep you there, to keep you in the system, it's when things got out of control, and it's why we're asking. I think the idea of us, these giants trying to police content is stupid because it's a horrible idea. But I also thought that the algorithm was counterintuitive. I stopped using Twitter as much when it went to algorithm. I stopped using Instagram as much because we talked about this before the show. It's disorienting to me, and it's not what I want out of it. But other people's engagement more than made up for that. Yeah. But once they got into the algorithm manipulation, the algorithm became the content. We're going to decide what content to put in front of you. And now we're kind of responsible if we put bad stuff in front of you, and now they're getting attacked for that.
And I feel like I'm the type of person, especially in the example of Instagram or other social media platforms, I have a principle, I guess, to want all of my stuff to be chronological and to just the things that I, choose to subscribe to. But I find also that on the flip side, a lot of times I hit the end of anything that's new and I want to see something new. And that means, going to the Explore tab on Tumblr or going to the homepage on Twitter and seeing what people like. And kind of, what happens is what they want to happen is where you click on it and you don't realize that you don't even realize until after you've seen the tweet that you like it, that it's not even from someone you follow.
That's what. Yeah. Frustrating for me, like with YouTube, is I want to watch like tutorials on coding, and they'll list, like Google will list, here's all the videos. They don't show me the ratings.
Yeah.
I have to click through and then go, oh, this has got garbage ratings. So people keep clicking on the headlines and watching the first 15 seconds and getting the pre-roll. And it's that the conversations, they have to police content. Like, yeah, you need to police to make sure something's not illegal. But once we step outside of that and we go, well, this is hate speech. Hate speech ain't in the Constitution. It's not there. They never would have put a mention of that in there because the problem is how do you define it? There's a big case right now in England where, a far right anti-immigration advocate is been arrested, put in jail because he was covering a trial involving, gangs of men who are accused of raping young women. And they happen to predominantly are the Muslim gangs. And you've heard about this case going on?
Yeah.
There's a complete blackout in the UK for on the guy's name and everything else going around. And there's, the questions legality. Like there's a judge said you can't talk about this case because it might prejudice jurors and all that. And there's question, there's a debate to be had about should we do that in criminal justice system or not, whatever.
It says, but super gag orders. Is that right?
Something like that, which sounds scary to me, but I'm open to hearing the explanations for that before I go on my knee-jerk.
Europe has and the UK specifically has notoriously, I would say, authoritarian laws about free speech in the press. Like there are, they do not enjoy the freedom of just being able to run stuff and then letting the merits of it be laid at the foot of like being malicious or anything like that. Like the government can just say you're not reporting on this, and you can just be made to not report it.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, there's the one place where you can absolutely say anything you want is
the internet.
No, I mean in the UK.
In
legally.
the UK?
Parliament.
Parliament.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can say anything you want there, but provided that you are, a politician, you have that. But that's like there's that's the one place where sort of the free speech boundaries or the limitations on speech stop is in there. As you can say whatever you want, which is sort of like, I don't, I'm not from there. I have no say in the politics there or whatever. I find that frustrating. And, the issues here, I'm hearing it through, people repeating it over here, what's going on there. My point, though, is it comes back to, is it like, it's very easy for people to say, hey, on one hand, we have in the United States, we have a very kind of this free speech is free speech. Unless you say something that is, objectively not true about somebody, then it's a civil matter, not a criminal matter. Mm-hmm. Europe's got some sketchy laws. I think Canada's too, that I don't, again, people from there, works for you. That's fine. If you're the person who doesn't want to say things that are outrageous. But, we're having this problem here because we talk about policing, and we go, do we police to the extent of the law, or do we police to what we think is, it hurt somebody's feelings, or, being mean to a group?
When a lot of it, especially in YouTube's case, which we've seen already in the past 12 months or so, is that advertisers are scared, and further in from the limitations of, say, the U.S. Constitution, they also want to appease advertisers and make it so that advertisers can click a button and say, either give me these definitely safe stuff, or I am okay with racy stuff. I'm okay with something even harder than that. And
I think the problem that YouTube wound up facing is that they very much defended their idea that they were only selling demographics, right? And they were only going to sell to allow certain channels for advertisers and punish, if not kind of outlaw or restrict, the abilities for creators to go out themselves and say, no, I want to sell, full access of my channel to X, Y, or Z, right? Like, that is hard to do. YouTube has put in, like, I don't remember. I don't know the latest. I'm sure, Bryce, you're more up to date on like what they're like. You can't have more than 2 like promos or whatever like in your video if you're also taking their ad dollars.
Yeah, I don't know the exact rules on it, but I do know that YouTube is a very complicated beast on the back end in terms of, like, certain large channels or corporate channels are allowed to sell their own ads and are able to somehow plug that into YouTube to say, hey, serve these instead of this. But as far as the rules on it, from what I know, at least the rule over a year or so ago was that you really weren't supposed to put your own ads into videos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You if you were using, YouTube AdSense or the partner program, whatever, you were not allowed to do that. And,
Oh wow! So you can't say inside the ad. Well, I mean, but you guys have ads for like Audible and HelloFresh on Modern Road,
well,
right?
and that's the thing of it, is that used to be the rule. I mean, if you go back to Scam School, there was certainly at least a time period during Scam School's run on YouTube, or continued run, where this rule did exist that said you weren't allowed to sell space inside of your video, and whether it's because Scam School was, say, an MCN, a channel that was controlled by a network or what, the general rule was, and I think still is, and maybe it's just a paper rule and everyone's ignoring it, is that you're not supposed to really sell ad time and sort of skirt all of these monetization things, which is what YouTube was afraid of. But now, we continue to sell ads on these videos, and now YouTube has a checkbox that says, hey, does this video include product placement? And we say, yes, it does, because it does. And when you watch it, and this is a new thing over the past, say, 6 months or so, when you start a video that has that thing checkmark, you'll actually see on it includes product placement, which is kind of a weird thing. But, when it's the start of the video and it's the guys saying, hey, this is sponsored by a domain, then that totally tracks. That's not an issue. So I think it's a thing that is technically a rule, but I don't know that YouTube is
I guess beyond the specifics, YouTube and a lot of these platforms have gotten themselves into trouble where I think a lot of the core elements of their platform that they've allowed to kind of overgrow and haven't made hard decisions on earlier now create larger, more explosive problems where, YouTube found a place where they had advertiser groups, gigantic groups of advertisers in revolt because stories were coming out that, you were getting a Clorox bleach ad on an ISIS beheading video.
Yeah.
Right. And that to me is these are all things that they made decisions to let kind of unfurl to the point where they had to make decisions that they might not have been happy about when the chips were down and advertisers were saying, no, listen, we're going to pull money back from advertising on these platforms. And that's hard. Those are not optimal decisions to make. And it's not people are looking to walk away from your platform that you have to make, healthy audience-based decisions that keep people happy on your platform. That's rarely is it like, when a gun was to my head, I made the healthy decision.
Well, and the other tough thing is that in terms of online video, Google is in uncharted territory, right? There's no other video site, and there probably hasn't ever been one that has so much market share, is at such a huge scale, and is integrated into such a high-tech company like Google, that everyone, I think everyone has the expectation that Google can or must fix all of the issues, and it's a very hard situation. I think I bet they can, but I don't know what the answers are.
I perhaps, but I'll say here's the complicating part of this was Google succeeded over Yahoo because Google said, hey, instead of having your advertising managers be people who handle this like a magazine and do ad sales and say only call us if you have more than $10,000 a month to spend, Google came up with a computational solution to it, with AdSense, which was the idea in AdWords, which is the idea that, you say, I got $12 a month to spend. And Google's like, yeah, we can make a profit on that, because it's all a machine. There's no human there handling that. Yeah. And Google built its empire based upon the idea of, hey, if we're in the age of the internet and computers, why not use computers to solve these problems? And so when it came to running auctions and doing things like that and ad sales and doing content analysis in a blog or news article to figure out what ad to run, it was pretty good and good enough. Now, as they became a main distributor for content, as you went to Google to go to YouTube to watch videos, and they became this primary source of content or distributor of content, it got more complicated because now we're saying, no, we don't want this ad to go with this video. But the problem is the only way to know what this video is about is to have a human watch it. And one of the reasons Google's been spending a lot of effort in trying to do transcription isn't just to help people who are hard of hearing. It's so they know what's in the video itself. But still, that's a big challenge. And that's the problem Facebook faces, is that Facebook could have this. All they had to know at the post was like, hey, if we showed this to 5 of Bryce's friends, they all clicked on it. Let's show it to all 50 of you have more friends than that. Let's show it to all of Bryce's friends, and we will promote this post. It doesn't care what it is because it doesn't need to know. The algorithm can be quite dumb as far as the content itself. It can pick up some keywords or things like this, and that scales wonderfully because you write one piece of code and you can replicate it for millions, for 1 billion users. But once people are like, oh, no, this video is horrible, it's hate speech, it's this, then it's like, well, why did you do this, Facebook? And there was the assumption that there's people there going, yeah, post this, raise this, put this there. Wasn't. It was a machine. Now we're like, you've got to solve this problem. Well, it's a damn hard problem to solve. Very, very hard to solve because they pointed out in that article before, AI can't solve everything. Like, well, not at the moment, but presently, yeah, it's really hard to know. Is an Al Jazeera post talking about, a problem in Syria? Regular news versus something that's an ISIS recruiting video, which, to the casual observer might seem similar, but actually are radically different and totally different sides of the spectrum, but they have on the surface a lot of the same features. Oh, there's Arabic, there's violence.
And I think a lot of it goes back to an issue of scale. Even if Facebook or YouTube create the perfect or not perfect, create the most ideal or most effective version of this algorithm, those companies are so large that the people that will be caught in it, that will be caught in the fringes of it, will still be sizable enough where it will be a no-win. It will be hard to claim anything will be a victory because of how impossibly large both of those companies are.
Absolutely. And, the problem they had early on was like Facebook said, we'll have a team of people who go through and for the bigger posts and we'll decide. And then, hey, they recruited a bunch of people and contractors in the Bay Area to decide, what's to one extreme or the other. And guess what? Some people thought that it was a bit biased.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's right.
In Facebook's case, it was like 10 unemployed writers in Brooklyn that they put into a warehouse so they could determine, trending topics that were too racy or not sufficient. And turns out when you put a bunch of unemployed writers from Brooklyn into a warehouse, that politically, if there was a slant, it was that conservative stories wound up getting taken down more than liberal stories wound up getting taken down. So,
and that newsroom, if you want to call it a newsroom, technically was only around for a couple of months. I mean, none of those
Yeah.
people were full time. All of those people were contractors.
Mhm.
All the people who came out and spoke about it said, yeah, we were thrown in a closet and then were tossed out one day.
And it shows you that, you know, we here we're like, well, this is doomed to fail because of this. But, you know, now as we've talked about this before, Google with the Selfish Ledger is, you know, an internal project there that got a lot of attention and, you know, and now got some criticism because it turned out that they didn't get clearances to use some of the images and video there.
The stock footage, yeah.
Is that, you know, we're expecting these people who run these empires because they run these billion-dollar empires. You know, God, they got to be universally smart. They got to be smart all around. Turns out, no, they're smart at a couple of things, and they hire people who are smart in some of those same things. And we've seen there is not a lot of tolerance for very different ideological points of view. And not even say that people with different points of view, but people who can at least articulate that in some of these situations. And that causes problems because then you're like, who would have saw that coming? I don't know. Maybe if we had people from different points of view, we would have.
Well, and that's where I think when you get into the conversation of hate speech, there is to me, step one of determining an effective filter for keeping speech, and let's just even define hate speech right now as something that is objectionable to 80% of your user base, right? Something that, like, when the vast majority sees it, they're like, oh God, no, like, that's not appropriate. You have to understand where that 80% is, right? Like what is that tie that binds, and that will bind beyond ideology, that will bind beyond politics, right? Like, you know, I think there's a line between, all right, here's somebody laughing hysterically over, you know, lynching footage, and somebody that is articulating a political opinion that is not in, you know, that is fringe, right? But is just somebody talking about it. Where do we categorize that? And like, I don't say that in a way that I think that, you know, people can just Thanos snap their fingers and make it happen. Because I do think, like Andrew pointed out, when so much of this is algorithm based and so much of this is computational, it's hard to figure out what those things are. And as they are now, specifically YouTube, if we're going to keep on that, they are post one advertiser revolt. You can understand that now they are going to be more draconian than they would be if, let's say, this was an internal crisis of conscience 5 years ago, that they were like, all right, we have to take some unpopular steps to safeguard ourselves for the future. Now they're like, no, we have to cut this off way further than we would have otherwise, because now we are, you know, we're over the barrel if people have already attempted to pull their money out once.
Yeah, it is in some ways it's trying to put, put the genie back in the bottle. It's trying to sort of put things back in there, and it's problematic. And I don't think there is, as Bryce pointed out, a solution that's going to be happy towards for everybody. There's going to be people who are going to be excluded there, and we can't even agree because we have points of view in our own discussion room here about like what's okay and what's not okay. Like, is it, when is speech okay? When is it not okay? What is the responsibility of a platform? And you have in Justin's point out, in YouTube's case, you have advertisers say like, we like this, we don't like this, and we don't want to be associated with this. But then you have so much, you look at Google, talks about how many hours of content are uploaded to YouTube like every day now.
I mean,
the average lifetime of everybody
Yeah.
every day.
It's
Yeah.
like a year of content a day or something like that. Like multiple hours every hour.
Let me upload it there. Let me go. YouTube content uploaded every minute. From 2018, 300 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every minute.
Wow.
Jesus.
That's incredible.
That's a lot of hooch.
And
I have so much to catch up on. Jeez.
I know it's
What am I doing? Oh, wait, I'm making content. I'm part of the problem.
get to watching.
So that's
Yeah, man.
like 18,000 minutes an hour.
Yeah. Wow. Man. I think it also I would not. I think on the end of this road, whether it's appeasing advertisers or curbing, say, hate speech or objectionable content.
Wait. I'm sorry. Wait, that's 18,000 hours every hour.
18,000 hours every hour?
Yeah, 300 hours a minute.
Yeah. What?
18,000 hours of content.
That's crazy.
Yeah, 18,000. 300 hours every minute times 60 is 18,000 of hours of content every single hour. Okay.
1,800.
So,
no, you're right. 18,000. Wow.
yeah. So times 24. So 500,000 hours a day.
Wow.
So what team do you put in charge of policing that? Taiwan?
Yeah, right.
I think at the end of this, the Google and Facebook will not be sad that they've had to invent this technology, whatever it is, to determine more accurately what is in the content of a video, because they are, at the end of the day, whether they're trying to appease advertisers, they are also trying to keep people on their service. And if they have a better sense of, okay, well, this is what type of content in it, and this is what sort of things you see in it, and this is in a near future scenario, this is the quality of that content, they would only be better able to ramp up their recommendation engines.
So, yes, when you get there, I agree. The problem is when we're looking at 500,000 hours of content a day. Mm-hmm. One, you need to have the model that's able to do that, which has to be an extremely, and from my belief, would have to be something that's a very, very adept AI that's very understanding where something falls in the spectrum, what have you. You know, and we've heard the problem we have is there's a fundamental lack of understanding in the media and a lot of critics about this. Like, oh, they should have people filtering this. It's like, how do you filter 500,000 hours a day of content? And nobody, like, you're like, well, maybe we should have as much. Like, no, that's not the answer. You know, and then it's and you get like Facebook, you know,
finger in that dike.
Yeah, Facebook now is something like 10,000 people or something who are trying to filter it, whatever, and it's like, we're going to keep it in.
And by the way, so by those numbers, 18,000 hours, that means that every hour there are 750 24-hour days worth of content that are uploaded to YouTube. That, by the way, is over 2 years. 2 years worth of content if you were to do nothing but watch YouTube uploaded per hour.
Yeah.
And the thing to think about, too, is that you could say, like, well, they should just hire more people. The problem is that average hour of content would never make back what you're paying somebody to watch the whole thing and review it. You will never get that money back, because that, if it costs you $20 an hour to hire somebody to do it, that video is never going to make $20 in its entire lifetime.
Sure. Though I do think that YouTube, and YouTube has done this before, can work from the top down and give that level of service to the high and mid-tier creators who constantly are constantly having to get into kerfuffles. Oh, someone claimed my thing. It's taken days for anyone to look at this thing that is clearly okay.
Agreed, but the problem, but the problem is that you get the bulk of the content that covers 3% of the content that's on YouTube. 97% of it are these videos that get less than 100 views or whatever.
Sure.
But you get 1,000 of these videos uploaded under different names that are using these computer algorithms to generate content and stuff, or to be controversial. And that's the problem is that I don't know how you do it. And I think that it's a problem they created. And we're talking about people like they're not too sympathetic towards Google or Facebook. Nah, I'm with you. It's a problem they largely created. The algorithm was designed to take content, get you to watch more, regardless, and I'll even say irregardless, just because I want to be irrational, regardless of what it is and the effect of that. And that's fine. That's a choice they get to make. Mm-hmm. But there is a price to pay down the line, which is if you create this platform that all of a sudden people become very, very unhappy with some of the things on it. And also we have the problem, too. It's like we tend to be very unhappy with the stuff that we disagree with. not the stuff that we agree with, because you'll hear a lot of people like, you shouldn't be able to harass or this or whatever. It's like, how many people that you follow on Twitter harass people that you don't like or say things that are very negative or very much like this, but it doesn't trip your, hey, this is wrong, because, well, that person is bad. That person is wrong, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fine line between harassment and a awesome dunking on when it comes to social media.
Yeah. Watch so-and-so totally get served up here. And you're like, do I like the part of me that likes that?
Well, and this is all like, then you get into the satirical or comedic or creative takes on all of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Which is already, there's a guy I follow on Twitter who I think is pretty funny, who got temporarily locked out of Twitter for like a week because he said something inflammatory, and it was very obviously a joke, but also he followed it up with a tweet saying this is not a joke, and it clearly was, but that's a computer won't know that.
Well, and I wouldn't doubt if that goes to somebody that, you know, puts a human that rubber stamps that. Sure. Yeah, but it's like, but if all you get is this context and you don't know that it's like, you know, this is a satirical thing. Like they take into account like Pixelated Boat, right? Mm-hmm. Who does a comic and oftentimes ventures into the political, but you might know him as the author of the Gorilla Channel pages from the Fire and Fury book, where a lot of the stuff that he does is he'll just say like, I can't believe this, and then it'll be a photoshopped either tweet or and the Gorilla Channel thing was during, so this is example, like, what a strange tweet, and it's Donald Trump's Twitter. It's a screen grab. Happy Memorial Day. Those who died for our great country would be very happy and proud at how well our country is doing today. Everybody loves Raymond canceled. Ray Romano dead. Happy Easter. So, like, that's somebody that obviously is a satirical person, right? A satirical account. But if he says this thing that gets flagged, right? It's users that are flagging this as inappropriate. It then goes to somebody who only sees the two things that are mentioned. And if those two things are, I'm going to kill the president and this is not a joke, then like, boom, like that's what else do we want from a human objective authority? Like, it's not their job to go back into the history and say, well, clearly this person has a fancy for the whimsy. Let's let him off. Like, now that gives you carte blanche to say, I'll kill the president. This isn't a joke.
Sure. And it wasn't even like it wasn't even, I'm going to kill the president. It's like,
sure.
What was it? Hillary Clinton should get run over by a monster truck or something like that. Something like with a whimsical twinge to it. There's
according to the popular vote, that's I'm going to kill the president.
But you know, and the stuff he's done before is hilarious. Like you mentioned, like the whole Gorilla Channel thing was absolutely brilliant, because I remember reading that, I'm like, oh, this is great, this is beautiful, this is like just wonderful parody, and then you watched it get circulated because people believed it. And
so, for those of you who don't know, when Fire and Fury came out, which was a very short runway, it kind of became obviously a gigantic viral sort of sensation.
A book about the president, Trump's presidency.
All these inside sources of the tumultuous opening days and final days of the campaign of the Trump campaign in White House, right? And so Pixelated Mode did this hilarious thing about how Donald Trump was furious that in the White House they didn't have the Gorilla Channel, which he demanded was 24 hours of gorillas fighting each other. And then so they made a loop of gorilla footage, but he was upset because it was boring because there wasn't always gorillas fighting. So they edited out all of the documentaries where gorillas weren't fighting. And they said that he watches the Gorilla Channel for 17 hours straight.
it's and it just you read this and it's a hilarious because it's like you take the thing like that our president likes to watch Shark Week and extrapolate this into this whole thing, and it's a caricature, but the beauty of it was how many people thought it was real. The caricature in their head was so extreme that couldn't separate it from this silly sort of parody. And that's the other part of it, is that you go like, who's then responsible? Mm-hmm. You know, who's responsible? You know, is this guy created something that's very funny? And to some people would go, well, it just shows you how close to the truth it is. Like, maybe, or shows you.
Yeah, and that's it's so funny. If you can bring back the pixelated boat response to it, the feeling when you parody a guy making up stuff about Trump, but people believe it's so you become part of the problem.
Well, that's the problem is you can't be responsible for other people being too gullible. Like if you're not trying to, he's not trying to trick anybody with this.
No. And his point was the point of his parody was. He thought that Fire and Fury, which I think history has kind of borne out a little bit, that Michael Wolff, the author, veracity was not his number one priority in writing that book. And I think that there is, as somebody who's read it in a political context, I think there's a lot of worth in Fire and Fury, specifically in understanding the structure of who leaks to who. But his point, Pixelated Boat, as an artist trying to parody, was like, this guy can make up anything and everyone would buy it. So he would make up the craziest thing, and then it winds up going viral as like, oh my God, you can't believe what happens in this book that not all of us have read yet.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's why the YouTube algorithm is weird.
Did you see the pinned tweet at the top of Pixelated Boat?
This is a Donkey Kong comic strip.
Oh, yes.
Discourse Donkey Kong from pursuing discouraged Donkey Kong from pursuing a literary career. I'm writing a magical realist novel about a candle maker who befriends a haunted mandolin. And the guy presses the button that says, criticize the ape's turgid prose. Your words cut deep. Donkey Kong has dropped out of his MFA program. You win.
No, he is a hilarious comic artist, and I would highly recommend you follow him on Instagram. That is an all-time Instagram follow where he posts all of his comics. Very, very, very funny.
So we've solved it all, guys. We've solved it.
Well, listen. I mean, I don't know. This maybe we should save this for after things, but. I mean, we do talk a lot about Elon Musk on this show. Do we want to talk about the Elon Musk thing either here or on After Things, or do we want to?
We'll do that after things.
We'll do it for After Things.
I would say that I think that certainly we need to have, when it comes to sort of the algorithms, something like that, is one, I think we need to have a better understanding of what's attainable presently, what is worthy of being attained, how these things work. You know, I think the part of it is that you get this, well, they should do this. Like, that would be great if they could do this. But doing that may not be as easy as we think it is, because it's like we should, you know, because people have solutions, but they haven't thought deeply about the problem, or it hasn't maybe been explained to them, because I think even journalists don't understand it. They don't grasp it. And that's part of the problem, is that the people we look to explain things often are no more enlightened than we are.
I also think that, again, it's easy to forget, but I do believe that we are still in a very awkward adolescence with the internet, and so much new has happened that has radically shaped our world that we are finding ways to understand it. And part of that is, I would suspect, in 10 to 15 years that we will think differently about platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, because I think that they're closer to the power company than they are a thing that, you know, everything needs to be answered for. And I think that that's somewhere where we're going to get to a point where we need to be able to criticize peer-to-peer on these networks. But I do think that there's a limit in what some of these platforms can do when the amount of volume of stuff is kind of coming in and everybody's priorities are different.
You know, I had a friend who was a very, very, very intelligent person, a media personality, and very smart, very, very, very smart person. And I would watch them get upset early days of the internet, and feel like they had to respond to everything said about them. You know, somebody'd say something on a forum, and they'd be like, I'm like, what are you doing? We need to go set this thing up. Like, oh no, I got to respond to this. Why? Because they said this. I'm like, who cares? I can't let it go unanswered. And I'd be like, I don't know if you realize how big the internet is. You don't think you want to spend your entire life going there, but he couldn't understand how big it was, and the fact that just trying to go into this one forum, this one place to argue with this one person was not going to solve it. And so I've watched very intelligent people fail to understand, you know, like, and everything that's in front of you is not everything in the world. You know, like, it's important to him. This must be a big deal because it's brought to his attention. But it's like, no, there are probably 1,000 other forums right now that are having conversations very similar to this. Yeah. And the more time you waste here, the less time you spend doing the things you should be doing.
I bet that there's like a human nature element to that. I'm sure. I especially in the past couple of weeks have been trying to disengage a lot of just like, okay, I saw that and I don't need to put my input in it, or I disagree with this thing and I don't even need to let this person know that I disagree. I just am going to go.
By the way, I love the new look Bryce 2.0 fully gibberish Twitter account. Like, it is great. I think it is just go ahead, give him a follow at Brycas on Twitter, BRYCAS.
Okay, so last night I did tweet out just every single non-verbal muttering I could think of in like a minute. But my Twitter has lately been a lot of like, here's a portmanteau I came up with, or here I photoshopped this game called Raft into the word fart, because I need it to be light, and I need to just disengage and not get, because that's the thing, especially on Twitter, you can get under. I'm easy to get under my skin, and I have, I don't know, I guess a sense of justice where I need to. It's
almost as if the content's designed for that.
What?
That it's designed to be less nuanced and more about drawing in clicks and retweets. And you know, one of the funniest things that I have seen is in my role as a political pundit, where I am now reading far more than I on purpose than I would even otherwise. I'm trying to keep in touch with not only my own personal political whims, but also a general zeitgeist. As you go to reddit.com or Reddit r/politics, right? Mm-hmm. And they have a very, very, very smart rule. Kudos to r politics for having the rule. No changing the headline.
Oh.
So now if you have a headline, it's got to just be the headline, right? Seems like a great idea. Except for the fact that now the most popular things is just incentivizing the most salacious possible versions of the headlines.
Yeah.
So now they also have a whitelisted group of sites. So it's like, and it's fairly robust and it covers stuff from all ideological spectrums. But if, let's say, theoretically, I'm going to posit this, I don't have any scientific evidence, but let's say, for example, that maybe r/politics, the majority of the readers and voters are liberal. Mm-hmm. What you happen to get is just the most salacious liberal-leaning headlines that rise to the top.
Yeah.
And it shows you, look, that rule was there theoretically to get the most even-keeled stuff you could.
When, in fact, what people did was what people choose to do, which is to bend around the rule to get what they want to do, which is to get a reaction and a rise out of people.
And it demonstrates that, look, these are uncertain times in the world of media, and everybody needs that click, and they want to get that click more than the site next to them.
Yeah.
In any way that you can metaphorically imagine all sites physically being next to each other.
Yeah. It's like a street.
Yeah. Like a big, Silk Road.
Like a big super highway.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to do picks?
Sure.
I got a pick. This is a game that I think I've bought twice now because it's very good. And I think I had bought it on my 3DS, and I don't use my 3DS, so now I bought it on the Switch. It's SteamWorld Heist. You guys heard of SteamWorld Heist?
No.
So it is about these sort of steampunk-looking robots who are also cowboys. I think they're called cowbots, who travel through space and board other ships and fight and steal and get loot from the poor bastards who end up on the other side of the ships. And it's, if you've ever played something like XCOM or something that is tactical but not too systems heavy, SteamWorld Heist is very much in that vein. And it's also 2D, which is an interesting take on a tactics game. And I think it works generally really well. You still have cover, but you're also manually aiming your shots. So some of your guns have like laser sights, so you'll see where the bullets will go, but some of them you don't. You have to account for recoil. It's really cool, and it's a really good portable or Switch game because you can the missions are very short, and you can always just pause and suspend and come back to it at any time. So that's something that I've gotten back into, which is SteamWorld Heist.
My pick is Legion.
Oh,
Legion is a television show on the FX channel. It can be downloaded on many different platforms. I love this show for a couple reasons. Number one, the actors are fantastic. You always love to spend time with them. Number two, Noah Hawley continues to kind of announce himself as one of just the most amazing creative forces to watch going today. He's obviously prolific, considering that he's juggling this and Fargo, and this is no small. The amount of effort put into each and every episode just kind of makes everything else on television sort of pale in comparison visually.
Yeah,
but it's also just a great X-Men story, and it kind of reminds you that the X-Men movies that we get are always, because Wolverine's the most popular character, they tend to be very action adventure-y sort of stories, with the most that we ever get in the psychic element of it is usually almost defined by the boundaries of how far Professor X or Jean Grey can do it, and everybody's wearing helmets just so you can keep it away and doesn't just invalidate the plot. Or Cerebro, because every X-Men movie on some point revolves around who's going to go into Cerebro and whether or not Cerebro is going to work. But Legion dares to ask the question in both seasons, and this one I think specifically, what if we had no restrictions and we just had multiple characters that have these fantastic psychic powers? What kind of story can we tell, and how should we illustrate it? And man, I just can't speak highly enough of how much I love season 2 of Legion.
Yeah, I don't keep up with it every week because we aren't watching it on Spoiler in Time right now, and so every time I sit down to watch an episode or two, I'm like, yeah, this is a really incredible show. Like, they really go out of their way to try to make every bit of it feel bespoke, Oh
yeah, and look, there are some of the episodes are bottle episodes, and they certainly take enough time sometimes for what I assume is Noah Hawley or the writers' room's personal missives on life and philosophy, as narrated by John Hamm.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, like, there's just a great superhero story in this, and it just shows you that it doesn't all have to be like that. Those first 2 seasons of Daredevil I really liked, because it was like punch, kick, chop, socky, but that's what that character is. That's what Luke Cage is. That's not every superhero,
Yeah.
And it's what I liked about Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange ended the way that it did, and it's what I love the most about Legion. Is like, hey, look, here's a story about psychics and stuff like that, but it just takes it to the wildest extremes instead of trying to figure out, like another show that's currently airing, as soon as somebody gets psychic powers, how we can immediately define where the gates are.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't think of anywhere interesting to take somebody with unlimited powers.
And I think the more that superhero or comic book character media can get out of being action-y, just, it's who are we punching this week? Like, the further we can get out of that and try to explore other interesting parts of these worlds, or worlds that are just filled with superheroes, I think the better off the genre will be, because
'Cause
there's space for
that's-
all of it.
The other thing about Legion is that I think there's maybe like one human character, like everybody else is a mutant, so it's not necessarily about, like, oh, are we scared? Are we super beings? Like there's like talks about the world, right? But in general, this is all a bunch of superpowered people just having a story amongst themselves, which is rad.
And I like that the X-Men stuff is very a very light touch. I don't know a lot of X-Men stuff, and I really enjoy Legion. And I think I wouldn't enjoy it as much as if I knew or if there was more X-Men ties to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's stuff if you want to see it. There are references to larger things, but it doesn't beat you over the head. And at some point, I'm sure there'll be somebody that, wheels their ass out, and you'll be like really excited that they're there. But it's not the point of the story.
Wheels. Okay. Let's see where you're going.
I got a pick.
What you got?
And it comes with, a number of caveats, but
Okay. Classic if pick.
Uh-oh.
He got the thing.
I finally got the Lenovo Mirage Solo, right? It's
Okay.
on me. Nothing better than watching somebody play VR, right?
What I
You'll
love.
notice at front, there are the two cameras. So what
Yeah.
the two cameras do, that gives it what's called rolled sense. And that is what enables it to, let me just get out of Blade Runner Revelations where it's very loud.
Sure.
What that does is it gives you 6 degrees of freedom. So that means that I can move my head around, track, I can go up and down. At the Vive, you've got to have the lighthouse, those different things to bounce back at you. This does not need this.
Mm-hmm.
This is completely self-contained as far as being able to track the headset all around, so I can walk a few feet forward, I can look around objects, etc. Now, all the games in here are limited to how far you're able to move because they don't want you like walking into a sofa or tripping and then suing them or something.
Yeah.
It's got very good tracking. The refresh rate's pretty good. It's not as good of a refresh rate as, let's say, what you're going to get with a brand new Oculus or Vive, but it's $400 completely self-contained. The controller, if I were to say the weakest point would be compared to like a desktop system, like you don't need a PC or anything. You just put that thing on. Very limited number of games. Very, very limited number. But if you want to have that 6 degrees of freedom, it's cool. The other limitation is the controller. And so it's like a laser pointer. It points around. It does not move positionally in space like the Oculus or the Vive controllers do. So that's a limitation. But we're at that moment, though, where, a $400 device has that tracking built into it, is able to have 2 cameras to track, move you around, etc. is pretty amazing. I wouldn't run out and buy it unless I was like super, super curious to play around with some 3D and wanted that experience. Mm-hmm. I think the $200 Oculus Go is cool, but it doesn't have that 6 degree of freedom, and there's a world of difference between the two of them. Also, you've got to adjust the head just right. When I first did this, my head hurt for an hour afterwards because I had it too tight. So,
yeah.
But
So
it's
glad it was just that. Because when I had initially talked to you and you were like, my head hurt for an hour, I'm like, oh geez, I hope it's not like a refresh rate thing or that's like a migraine machine.
No, like literally, like the bridge of my nose physically hurt from that.
Gotcha.
So I'm more excited about what this means. A year from now, and if nobody's burning to like, I gotta do VR now. A year from now, it's gonna be great. But this. We talked about on the podcast previously about the growth rate of VR, and you can track where the hardware will be based upon how LCD screens are improving in size and the processors inside of there, what they're able to handle. Mm-hmm. Next year, you're going to be moving up to like the $400 device is going to have probably 2K displays for each eye. It's going to have a much better processor. It's going to probably have a better tracker that'll be able to be positional in space. And I think that's where we're going to get closer to the thing that's going to be really cool.
Yeah. So. I mean, so this is built on like Daydream, right? So this uses
Mm-hmm.
all the Google VR ecosystem apps. I mean, imagine there's been the rumors of, Apple is making a VR, device, and we've seen, how powerful mobile chips have gotten year over year or every couple of years, and it would not be very long to until we have a mobile chip that is on par with something like the PlayStation 4, which has its own VR suite of high demand games.
Yeah, you can see where Apple's going with this, what Apple's been doing with their own AR kit and what they're doing at their own. They're building their own processors for stuff. But, Google's not complacent either. Google had a hardware intensive system for trying to do tracking and stuff. And then Apple came out with AR kit, and then Google came out with their own AR tool.
Core? Is that right?
Yeah, the AR Core, yeah. And said, hey, and Apple processors are very good at certain things like that make them probably give them the edge and may increase that. But, if something that gives you just as good of an experience is only 8 months behind, then great, everything moves forward. So it's exciting. So, yeah, people are putting a ton of effort into it.
Very cool.
And so
and
that's if you want, try it.
And I like that this Mirage has Daydream in it compared to the Oculus Go, which has its own subset of apps that doesn't work with the Rift apps, where the Daydream seems like it would be a viable alternative marketplace for mobile-based
in both
apps.
of them though you're kind of going like, all right, like what is there?
Sure.
What content is there? And you're kind of left a little bit
underwhelmed.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, without Brian here, it's been awesome. I'm kidding, it's terrible.
Oh.
It's been weird.
Oh.
Great. Do you guys need a break?
Let me take a
Sure.
take a drink.
And you don't have a hard out, right, Justin?
Do not.
Great. Very cool. In the middle of that show, my time code, I think I hit a wrong button on my time code app, and it stopped it didn't just stop, it reset the time code back to 0. So I had to manually, just like in the middle of it, you might have been able to see me manually hit the 10-second forward button, 50 times 6 times to get back to to where we were. But thankfully, I only missed a few time code edits on that. So, all right, we're gonna be back with After Things in just a moment, everybody. After Things pick. I had something in mind. Oh. What is it?
Oh, so do you have any big fun things happen over the weekend, Bryce?
Over the weekend, I think what I did. No, I don't think so. I think it was an easy weekend. Brian went out of town. We'd been hustling to get some extra videos done to announce the Scam Stuff sale. But even then, no, I didn't do too much this weekend. Did you guys end up doing that big barbecue thing you were talking about last week?
No. We didn't do anything like that this week. We did. No, we had tickets to this thing they do. They used to be one of our favorite restaurants, but now, insert debate on minimum wage here, but and rent prices in the Bay Area. They claim that they could not afford to operate all the time, but they can keep the lights on if twice a month they open for the weekend. So like they'll sell tickets that basically is your pre-bought meal. Like, so it's like 6 courses.
Wow.
And they have like a 6 o'clock sitting and a 10 o'clock sitting.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean it's cool. I like it. It's always good food.
It sounds. Is it like a high-end sort of place? That sounds like something a very like exclusive restaurant would do. But if it's like a money thing,
it's like some Bay Area stuff. So it's like, yes, it's all the price of being really, fancy, but it's also like, the dude sitting next to us was wearing a gigantic Carmen Sandiego hat, kind of tilted with like costume jewelry on. So it's like, it's definitely a let your freak flag fly kind of establishment, but also you're not getting any discount on that, Although it was like $65 like per person for like 6 courses, so it actually really wasn't all that bad.
Yeah, six courses is a lot of stuff. Huh.
It's tiny, so
yeah. I don't know how much I have to add about the Elon Musk news thing, but I think it's a good topic. So
I mean, I can talk all day about a Yelp for journalists,
Okay.
but I don't want to take a conversation a place where there's nobody else that wants to talk about it.
I think we can talk. I think more about like, certainly a conversation of how you handle social media in reaction to it in this age, and our thoughts on that. One second.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Let's see, pull up some stuff here. Oh my goodness. Close. Okay. I think I'm good to go here. If you are good to go, Andrew.
I'm ready.
Let's do this.
All right. Take it away in 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to After Things, the podcast that comes after Weird Things. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Justin Robert Young.
Well, hello, friends.
And Mr. Bryce Castillo.
Hi, everybody.
So, Justin, you want to start off with the topic?
Well, rarely discussed figure on this program, Elon Musk, got himself into a bit of a brouhaha on Twitter. This was stemming from a report that he disagreed with or thought was biased about a Tesla plant, and it erupted into several tweets where people were going back and forth with him, in which he not only lamented whether or not the media was trustworthy, the media writ large, but also wanted to know whether or not people in a poll would be interested in a site that allowed people to score and rate journalists, which he defined, I think, as reporters, editors, and publishers with sophisticated bot tracking. So create media credibility rating site that also flags propaganda botnets. Your choices are yes, this would be good, or no, media are awesome. He also joked and said that he would call it Pravda, which I don't know if everybody got that. I think that was pretty clearly a joke, but there's that. Predictably, journalists said, awesome. We look into things all the time. We would very much be excited about people looking into us and rating us as we literally do for every other profession. Just kidding. They said that it was awful and it was terrible and it would never work and it would erode an already crumbling trust in the media that has been exacerbated by insert your political metaphor here. So, where do we want to start?
Well, I will, from a totally unbiased point of view, says the guy wearing the SpaceX shirt.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I would say that sometimes we talked about this before about trying to understand incentives and trying to understand sometimes like why does a thing exist? Why does a thing do what it's supposed to do? And you can have the intentions of people involved with it, and then you can have what the outcome is. Google, we want to organize the world's information. YouTube, here's a great platform to share videos and stuff. And then why are people from ISIS using this? And it's like, well, this is what happens. Why are people Facebook? Hey, why are we people yelling at each other over politics? Because it magnifies, it does this. Elon Musk, in some regards, it's comical to people to go, why is this guy who's worth gazillions of dollars and heads these big companies kind of ranting against the media like, your father or something? Why is he doing this when he's a guy who's in power and he's in control? And part of it is that as powerful as somebody like Elon Musk is, one article in a large enough platform can send stock prices going down, can attack him personally, can still affect him. So no matter how much control you may have in some areas, getting criticism or dealing with this from other sources can still have an impact, can still make a difference. And, the history of powerful people being frustrated by the media didn't start last week. And, you can look at like in even the new economy, one of the things that happens when you're a powerful company, when you have a lot of different wheels in place and you're very dependent upon a lot of what you want to do on public opinion, and you feel that, hey, somebody can one article that's poorly sourced or one article that actually comes from a hidden source, which is a problem, that's meant to derail you, can derail what you're trying to do and cost you a lot, is frustrating. Remember the 90s? Remember what Microsoft did? They went to NBC, said, let's do a partnership. We'll call it MSNBC. Now it's totally going to be this independent sort of thing, which largely it was. But the goal of this was to promote technology and computers and the new media and sort of stuff, and also become, give Microsoft a foothold in media. And that was where MSNBC came from. The MS was Microsoft. You had, Carlos Slim, was owner of like 20% of New York Times, and also like not just what he owned from the shares, but a big debt holder to it. He would loan them money. New York Times, arguably one of the most influential newspapers in the entire world. Carlos Slim, for a period of time, the richest man in the world. The richest man in the world, was the guy that was lending money to the most influential newspaper in the world. Now, did that affect the newsroom? Did it affect that? That's a different discussion. But obviously, he saw an interest in there. He thought a financial reason to do this. Jeff Bezos now owns, the Washington Post, and owns this. Jeff Bezos is now the richest man in the world who has decided that I want to own a newspaper. Now, are we seeing signs of Machiavellian, manipulation and what's going on there? I don't know. I don't think so. But there still is. This guy's now employs tons of reporters, tons of places, things, people in that interest, because he has a concern about the media. Washington Times. Who owns the Washington Times?
I don't know. Do you know, Justin?
I'm just gonna say the Moonies.
Yep. The Unification Church. So they started this back in the early 80s, and they wanted to do this. So there's clearly been this, and that is, Elon Musk found an article that reinforced what he wanted to say, and he linked to this sort of not too well-known news site. And whoops, turned out it was a group that was associated with NXIVM, whatever, the sort of the sex cult sort of thing. And somebody pointed this out to Elon Musk, and he's like, whoops, deleting my tweet on that one. And that's, you have all these different interests.
His follow-up was, it's a shame because it was more accurate than non-cult related media.
And I guess that gets into it, because if you can certainly get into, where does the frustration come from? And I think a lot of his frustration has come from, there's been, a lot of attacks on Tesla, and it's a big company, has a lot of customers and a lot of employees, and it's going to be doing things that, that are open to fair criticism. And his frustration has come from, I think there was the article Justin mentioned where, there had been reports of like, oh, they've, employee, that they're, it's a bad place. Elon Musk is a bad person because these bad things are happening there. And his point is like, That's not true. This is the UAW and backing this whatever, but he feels it was unfairly presented, and he's dealt with this other times with reporters who if you type in Elon Musk and arrogant or whatever, you will find no shortage of people criticizing him. Sometimes for things that seem to be legit concerns, but sometimes just because it's Elon Musk, So
this is I brought this up the other week, but I am fascinated with where we are in our current culture and the backlash to Elon Musk specifically, because on his face, he's kind of the he's not the faceless banker guy. He's not, some executive at Morgan Chase. He's not even a venture capital. He's not Peter Thiel, right? Who has certainly been involved with a lot of successes, but now is more of a behind the scenes, board member and like engaging in venture capital. He's a doer, and he's doing things that theoretically are even in the zeitgeist of a popular culture, things that we want to move forward. Electric vehicles, space exploration, somebody who at the forefront of all of his companies, he says is a reaction to what he believes is the very real problem of man-made climate change, right? Like, this is somebody that you would think is kind of tailor-made to be praised, and certainly he has and was, and we've certainly lavished plenty of it on this show, but I almost wonder how much of it is a backlash to that, how much of it is a backlash to just wealth, how much of it is a backlash to the fact that he is a chesty guy on Twitter who likes to, be coy and sometimes venomous.
Yeah, certainly. And I think, and I will say, like, the Twitter thing, like, some people have good days, some people have bad days. Sometimes people go on social media and react to things. And sometimes, you wish, like, man, probably would have been better to take a few beats on that one before figuring out to respond, because it's not going to have the result you want, kind of thing. But, if Elon Musk was taking advice from me and the rest of the world about how to live his life, we would not be in the remarkable position we are today with a lot of achievements. It's like Steve Jobs, like Steve Jobs, by all accounts, there was jerk mode, and he could be a complete jerk to people. Like, there are enough stories that I believe that is. Steve Jobs is a hero to me, and I don't want to live up to those ideals, but man, I don't know what dial we change and still get the same outcome.
Bryce, do you hate Elon Musk? Do you recoil whenever we talk good about Sir Elon?
I don't know. I think I'm very mixed on him. Very clearly, the primary objectives of the many companies he started and the technologies he's created are meant for the human good. But I also don't. I think I maybe just. I don't know if I would get on with him as friends. I think that's maybe kind of where I'm at. I was like, I don't know. You're doing you. I don't know. We would gel. As far as like hate him, I don't hate Elon Musk.
Do you understand the backlash? If you were to explain the backlash, how would you explain
it? If I had to take a crack at it, it would probably be that he comes across as like tone deaf.
Okay.
I would say. He is one of a handful of people who are both hyper wealthy and very what's a good word? Very vocal on social media, or just a very, forward PR person for themselves.
But he's got hand waving syndrome, excessive hand waving of like, oh, whatever. Like, people have a problem with the Tesla plant. It's UAW getting, people have a problem with SpaceX. It's these other people. People have the autopilot's malfunctioning. It's this other thing. Like,
so,
and
let me throw something out there though. It's like, and Bryce, like, yeah, there are people who I look up to and admire, but I don't know if I'd want to be in a room with them for very long because there just wouldn't be room in there, you know. But that's fine because they're doing the thing that they do and they do it very, very well. Mm-hmm. What I find fascinating about Elon Musk, and there's now the comparison's been drawn to our president, Donald Trump, is that, you know, these guys, there's something on their mind. They tell us. We don't get we don't get a press release. We don't get this. They say on Twitter. And then Elon's case is he interacts with people for better or for worse. Is you've watched some people when they see that they can get a reaction out of him, he'll react to people. You get some people who say, you read some of the stuff said directly to him from people. He's a guy that wants to
directly,
he's a guy that wants to be around a bunch of other people and like, hey, let's hang out, let's talk kind of guy in some regard. Yeah. But then when you have the impact he does, when you all of a sudden open yourself up to what a lot of people who don't like you are saying, who don't like you from a variety of reasons, whether they're a hedge fund that's got $1 billion on the line that they may be about to lose the next few months if the Model 3 production keeps continuing its improvements like it has, or people who have a problem with wealth, people have a problem with wealth, and you look at some people, or people who have a problem that he has fans, people that like him. And you read some of the criticism from journalists who go to these events, where like the Boring Company, and you get this sort of snide and all the Muskvites or the Musk fans showed up. And it's this, do you do that at a campaign rally? Were you upset that, the politicians you like have people who like what they're doing? Is that a problem?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that, and I think maybe that's an element of it also is like, there are multifaceted and complicated issues, many of which that we've brought up, even just in this discussion. And I don't think Elon Musk is the type of person to he's going to defend himself, and he's going to try, like any person would want to, which is, give their side and what we all do which is we will sometimes say things in a particular way so that, framing certain stuff. It's tough. You can't expect him to be the final answer on these tough issues because he's going to be coming from his own side. And there are I think there are people on both sides of the spectrum. It has been interesting in terms of like the what did you say? The Elon heads, the Musk heads,
Muskvites, Musk fans, whatever. Yeah.
There was some tweet where I guess over the weekend he had replied to someone saying, "Oh, I'm not having a very good day right now," or "I'm not having a very good time right now," and there were people like, "Oh, hey, will it make you feel better if I buy stock in Tesla or something?" Like very weird. It's a very weird worship culture, and it's not exclusive to
that's Twitter. You see, like go find a famous person on Twitter that tweets a lot and dive into those replies, and you will see some strange things.
And I if you go to the Reddit Elon Musk, I can't even pronounce his name right now, the Elon Musk threads, you'll see a lot of just like, it's people ready to be a mob and cheer the hero kind of person. It's kind of like, hey, dial back, like let's support what he's doing, and just because he has a bad day on Twitter doesn't mean that we all have to pick up pitchforks and defend our hero, kind of thing. So I'm like, be like, oh yeah, no, we hear it. It's okay. But back to the point of like the Yelp for journalism kind of thing, like I love the idea. I don't know how it'll work, but and I noticed, but it's Justin pointed out, like, journalists do not like to take criticism. They do not handle it well. If you have ever corrected somebody, a journalist, on a factual point, and it's you'll know, and a polite, like, hey, just this thing, whatever, and you'll be either told like, okay, thanks, and good ones tend to say, okay, cool, got it, if you're right. Other ones will say, not important. I've had that before. Like just so you know, this number here is actually this. Here's the source one. I'm like, I don't think it's really that important to the thing. It's like, wow, you do not give an F. about your job, and I don't think I need to read you anymore, because if I pick this one up, what do I not know? But in journalists, serve media companies that have to get eyeballs, and the journalists can say, my job is to cover the truth. Your job is to get clicks. That's
But is that at the hands of the individual journalists? Is it at the hands of the editors in chief, the people who are passing out assignments, greenlighting assignments? Like, is it at the individual level that the concern is?
Here's the argument, I think, from the journalist side.
Yeah.
There's an old saying with journalism. The hours are long and the pay is bad, but at least at the end of the night, everyone hates you. And like there is a sense, and I've certainly felt it in the brief career I had in journalism, that your first, unless somebody is intentionally, like, they have a working relationship with you, or they are actively looking to feed you things, there's hesitation that you have to deal on every facet with people that you talk to in your job, because you have to, at the very least, prove yourself to be a worthwhile steward to get this information out. So I think that ultimately creates a sense of immediate kind of reflex when anybody questions that people aren't working very hard. And you see a lot of the same kind of mob mentality, where an attack on one journalist is an attack on all journalists, which I think is unhelpful, because I don't think it generally makes us more trustworthy of people when everybody's sticking up for the institution. The only thing I'll say is this. In my opinion, as somebody who was a journalist and now is outside of it and is doing my own independent thing, it's Elon Musk's right to push back on a report. He theoretically knows more about it than the reporter does. He should be able to say what he wants to about it. And I think that, to Bryce's point, there is probably a disconnect when Elon says and fiercely defends Tesla or SpaceX or something, how much we see his Twitter account and say, oh, what a thin-skinned baby, can't take criticism. And in his mind, he's thinking about the hundreds of people that are employed with him, that it's their reputations that are on the line, and he would rather be the person with his sword and shield tackling this than having somebody else think that he's not sticking up for them on his own team. But in my opinion, he should be able to push back, and they should create a Yelp for journalists. Like, the point when you are a journalist, in my opinion, is the truth wins out. And it's why you are endowed with the First Amendment, because that's your one thing. Don't be malicious and let the truth win out, and be as objective as possible.
One of the things, the trends that happened over the last 6 years, is major sites got rid of comment section. A lot of major sites got rid of comment sections, which was in the golden day of what the internet's going to be, is news sites are moving online and like, oh, and we can have comments and stuff. And then you got people saying horrible things, and you got people fighting, but you also get a lot of it. You get a lot of sites, and it's people tearing apart the journalists because they click, the headline, oh, this sounds interesting, and they disagree. And they do that. And it used to be, news sites would encourage journalists like, oh, engage with people in the comments. We want this, and that didn't last long, because, some sites they do it, some sites they don't. But it's become like a lot of major news organizations, they don't do that anymore. They got rid of that entirely. And that was a place to be sort of held accountable, but then to a degree, at least to hear that. But if you can get rid of that, then it's fine. But now, the idea of, hey, let's be able to evaluate that, because part of the problem is like, you take, like, you've been following what's happening to Jordan Peterson.
Ancillarily, yeah.
So Jordan Peterson, a Canadian psychologist who's written, extensively in his own sort of point of view on roles, modern society, things like this, whatever. Very, very interesting sort of, point of view on stuff, which would be considered, center right on that. And, he's talked about, like, why did the average German, become part of the Holocaust? Why did they become part of the problem in the Nazi Germany? Why are they part of this thing, the rise of that? But because he's coming from a right and he's actually a bit of a religious person, he's got that point of view on that. You're getting pieces that are saying, like trying to equate him to a Holocaust denier. And this guy could not be more equivocal that it happened and it was horrible and all this. But they're like, well, shouldn't you be doing more? Because, outright hit pieces saying, oh, he's become this leader for the far right. And it's like you get and they point to an article where some far right person satirically mentions him. But you get this sort of momentum of just this, you look at Jordan Peterson's. You read a piece that just makes him out to be a monster, then you read his point of view on what he's trying to say, and you realize like, oh, wow, there are people in the media ganging up on him because they disagree with him because there's a political slant or point of view, and that's problematic. And you don't really have, if you're a guy like Jordan Peterson, who certainly has a growing audience, but if you're a guy like that on the rise and somebody decides to write a piece on you in the New York Times and basically describe you, as worse than Hitler, you're going to spend so much time trying to say, no, I'm not. You don't even get your message out.
So to bring it to the idea for a Yelp for journalists, maybe it would be interesting to hypothesize what that is or what that looks like, how that works. There was some talk of, well, is it machine learning? Is there an artificial intelligence element to it? Is it user reviews? Because I think within all of that, you will find they each have their own unique issues and concerns, right? If you look at if you go a full user rating and user review based, you can look at something like Steam, the video games launcher, which constantly has to deal with, oh, here's a group of people who don't like this thing about this game or this thing about the decision that this company made, and so they're all going to, review bomb this title, and so it shows up poorly, and it's open to abuse. And then you have artificial intelligence, which someone has to be the arbiter of what is a success and a failure in terms of the results of that. What do you think? What do you guys think is the best way to go about this? If we take the foundation that a site like this can be generally good.
So, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, that it's a complicated thing and you have to try different solutions towards it. I get frustrated when I click through a headline and I go, oh, this was clickbaity, it's not answering this, or it's this. If I had known this person was the one that wrote it, I never would have clicked on it because I think they do garbage journalism. I see that in like aerospace, things like that, and science stuff and things like this. Like, oh, this sounds interesting. I'm like, oh, and it's not because, oh, I disagree. It's like, no, they didn't source this. They didn't go this. They keep going back to the same resource for this, whatever. And I get in politics too. I like contrary points of view, but I like really thought out ones. When I click through something and I find out it's an opinion piece, I always hate that because I'm like, I don't care what your opinion. Show me what the facts say and then build it something from there. So I think, yeah, individual journalists, you could say, hey, here's this, like somebody mentioned in here, like rate my professor, like how do you rate this thing? You could do that. And it's going to get abused. It's going to have problematic. But if you find a way to say like Amazon reviews where you go in there and that's got problems, but like, let me read the negative ones and see, if there's a book that, Hillary Clinton's book comes out and there's a ton of 1-star reviews, let me see those. Cause are there just people clicking 1 star cause they don't like her? Then make it, let's make that very clear. Cause then you want to weigh it on somebody who's actually read it.
Sure. I think one thing that something like Amazon or Steam have going for it in terms of reviews is that they're able to know when people have invested in an item, whether they've purchased it, whether they've bought it, whether they've played it, how long they've spent with it. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that like Steam is very uniquely able to filter down. It'll show next to your review, verified purchase, spent 6.1 hours playing this game, thumbs up or thumbs down, and the comment to where they will because review bombs are such a big thing on Steam, they will do like a a timeline basically of opinion on it, and so you can actually see the spikes of where there has been concentrated efforts to
move the needle.
To move the needle, right? Metacritic is another very similar thing where some game developers put Metacritic scores into the contracts of the games that they make, and users will go and try to tank the user Metacritic score because for whatever reason they don't like a game. It's I think it would be tough because I don't think that there's I don't think there's quite a trackable investment level for a 100% human based rating.
But so let's understand that it's imperfect, right? I think the one thing that would be very, very valuable is, so here are two kind of sports examples, because sports is a very frivolous branch of journalism, in my opinion, in general.
You hear that, sports journalists? You're frivolous.
Yeah. Oh, they can eat it, all of them. Just
first ones to be replaced by computers.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of gamer stuff, but like two journalists that are very, very respected that do kind of opposite things. And now I think they're both employed by ESPN, but they've kind of spawned their own branches of journalism. One is like Zach Lowe, who does NBA stuff. Both of them are NBA reporters, actually. But he does very, not like dry, but certainly like objective sort of X's and O's. These are the kinds of strategies that teams are employing. Universally liked by and large. Like if you read his comment section on ESPN, it's usually, "Thank you for writing this. I'm very happy to have read your article." On the other end of the spectrum, one of the biggest guys in terms of like scoops is Adrian Wojnarowski, who is like the guy who reports that your team just traded their best player. Like he is known for those kinds of reports. He is similarly lauded for what he does, but that he's in a speculative art form. The other guy's in a very granular art form, and they've branded themselves as such. And I think if I were to take a guess as the pathway forward in journalism, is that the vestigial tale that we have is, I think, what pisses people off a lot, which is journalists and editors as narrative setters, as opposed to information analyzers. Well, and I think that's where I think you would see those kinds of reporters be voted down and those kinds of outlets be voted down because they're going to be more controversial. And the ones that will rise to the top are those that are doing things that a lot of people like and consider of worth. And then the second phase, and Elon even said, is what would happen. And the reason why this would be a success is that it's just like Rotten Tomatoes. All these studios can bitch about how Rotten Tomatoes is tanking their movies and it's unfair. But then as soon as one of their movies gets a fresh rating, gets an 80%, gets a 90%, guess what's on their commercial? Because it's social proof that it's good. And if the New York Times was higher than the Washington Post, do you think that they wouldn't say verified by readers as more trustworthy than any other major daily? Of course they would.
Yes. I think, sorry, I lost my complete thread there. Bryce is chortling right now. I think that it's these things, these outsider ways of evaluating things are outsider until people say, yeah, let's go do this. And I think that, yeah, if you're a journalist, it's the idea that all of a sudden you're going to see your name on a website and you're going to be at the whim of other people judging whether or not, you're a good journalist or not, even though how hard you work. It's terrifying. Nobody wants to be judged, and particularly people who know the power of that. And as you point out, Justin, in the newsroom was just that, like, the power the editors have in setting the narrative. And that's frustrating to a guy like Elon Musk, is that one newspaper or one blog or whatever does a story, fine. But then it gets picked up and carried. Elon Musk was upset about something that happened earlier. There was a Tesla got into a car accident in Fort Lauderdale, right? Made national news. And Elon Musk is, there are 100 car accidents a day. Why is this one being covered? Because it's Tesla. And he got a reaction, journalists, like, oh, so we're not supposed to cover when you get into accidents. And the point wasn't that you shouldn't cover it, but it's, yeah, Sun Sentinel sounds like a relevant story for the Sun Sentinel. The only reason it went national, the only reason other bloggers and news agencies picked it up, though, was because of the name Tesla, not because Tesla has an outsized dangerous reputation or, outsized, real danger, which can be questioned or looked into, but because everybody knows the name Tesla, Elon Musk is in the news, and Tesla, whenever something, robots fail or whatever like that, it's sensational. And that's the sort of the argument is like, the reason it went national wasn't because the fact that there's a car accident is national news. It's because the name and, why did it? And so the argument went from he's saying like frustrated that it got all that coverage, but the reporter's like, oh, so we shouldn't cover this. It's like, no, the reporter who wrote that original article locally should have covered it. Why did you feel the need to repeat it? Because you knew it'd get clicks.
But if are clicks a bad? If we're saying that, like let's say the reporting on it was accurate, at least, are clicks not a good metric for that?
No, I mean, look, Elon Musk's a famous person. Tesla's the first American automotive company to have come along in a very long time. This is newsworthy for a lot of different reasons, not to mention the fact that autopilot is something that's going to be highly scrutinized because it's the most widely deployed version of a technology that we assume will only become a larger part of our lives. And to be honest, frightens a lot of people just on its face. So there's a reason why these things are newsworthy. The question is, and to be honest, I again, Elon should push back on it. I don't have a problem with him pushing back on it, nor do I think I find him to be thin-skinned, because I think he understands that there is, you write one story and it's a thing. You write two stories, now it's a trend. You write three stories and now all of a sudden some member of the state legislature wants to get their name in the paper because they know that if they introduce an anti-blank legislation, even if they know that it's not going to pass, that now it introduces it to another quadrant of lawmakers seek to stop Tesla. That's your headline. That's not factually incorrect, but the likelihood that it will make it past there, or if it will be enforceable, will be something different. And then if that gets traction, now maybe a national lawmaker does it, right? Or, Elon is in two businesses that are heavily dependent on federal regulation, on the automotive industry and rockets, right? Or and in the rocket case, down investment, right? The NASA's purchasing of services from SpaceX is a gigantic part of the revenue. So he would be ignorant to not manage the PR, and at the very least, if all he can do is get out his contrary point of view via his Twitter account, then that's what he is going to do. And I have no problem with him doing it.
Sure. Yeah.
But I also don't have a problem with people writing about it. I think at the end of the day, we're going to find out what's closer to the truth. And we should be critical of journalistic outlets that propagate something other than that. Yeah. And, I don't know. So yeah, I have no problem. I think a Yelp for journalists would be fascinating because, man, it would be the first time that I could remember journalists having to check something as frequently as authors check their Amazon ranking. Like, it would be compulsive. It would be intense. So I would be interested whether or not it'd be accurate. Oh, man, would it be interesting to watch.
It's not fun when when it's wheeled against you. And as journalists individually don't feel very powerful. They don't feel like they have, they're trying to defend their job, trying to defend, as media empires, is the newsrooms get smaller and smaller and smaller. You're in a frustrating position where you don't certainly feel very powerful. But, when that scrutiny is aimed at you, it's very uncomfortable, sure. Very awkward. And I'd say back to the Elon Musk point too. It's like a lot of it gets personal. A lot of the stuff that you read, a lot of the commentary about him is it's not just talking about the businesses, but, being accused, people doing mind reading to assume that they know why he's doing these things and assuming bad motives, and that probably, anybody has trouble dealing with that, particularly as somebody who likes to be in front of people or talking to people and engaging with people, who feels that he's sincere. It's not, can't be easy to pick up, or pick up your Kindle or your iPad and see, hey, here's somebody in the Atlantic calling me an a-hole. Oh, here's somebody here, this professor here who's an urban planner who's saying that I'm arrogant or whatever. And there's a big techlash. There's this big backlash now against, Silicon. And it's not new. It's been going on since the 1990s. The backlash has always been there against Silicon Valley and some of these, outsized personalities and stuff. But there is, I would say, from academia and whatnot, people who feel powerless feel like they've got to use sharper knives now. But, the people that are assailing are real. So,
yeah.
Problem solved.
There we go. Hit send. You're welcome, Elon.
So my goal is, what I think what we need is like a platform where I go and we create accounts and we can share articles with each other. I can say, hey, I just read this thing. This is pretty cool. And you guys could share articles you think is cool. And then you could like it, and then if you like it, it's good. And then maybe we have an algorithm that might decide to sort of say, hey, let's promote more of these articles that Justin likes or Bryce likes.
That sounds
like a foolproof plan.
It sounds a lot like Facebook.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
No, it's different because it's going to work because I'm going to like stuff and it's going to, promote the stuff that we like and we're into, Bryce.
Yeah. Well, but also like sharing stuff with people. Like what if it wasn't just news articles? What if it was just your own thoughts? And then
you can do that too. Sure.
What if you could separate them into communities and they could each be their own community, right? And you could vote it up or vote it down, or
Well, just vote up. Just vote up. Keep it positive.
Okay. Well, okay.
Just like it. There you go. See? Yeah, that's the problem. It's like you saw it with Facebook on the surface. You're like, yeah, this sounds like what could go wrong. But I would argue nothing really went wrong. Nothing went wrong. The platform did what it was supposed to do, but people were surprised that the platform did the thing that it was supposed to do.
It scaled, and so all of the very little problems with that grew as Facebook grew.
And I don't know that they were a big problem. I don't know that. I know that people were upset. People were upset because there are a lot of people in every election, but in this one, really upset with the outcome of the election, and particularly people who are, in the media and elsewhere, whatever, and want to look for why did this happen, and it's better to point to one thing rather than a lot of things, or just to say this is the way democracies work. But all of a sudden, was it a problem when it worked to our advantage? The last two previous elections, when manipulation was taking place and people were buying, data to do things like that, it was okay then? When did the system break down? Well, when we had an outcome that we weren't happy with.
Foreign interference. I mean, now we're getting into a whole.
I know, but point is, it's like maybe it's doing exactly what we wanted to do, things that these things can't do or shouldn't do.
And look, these are growing pains. These are platforms that yes, like they're designed to do things, and yes, Facebook could have been more proactive about a lot of different things, but they weren't, and they are learning as they go. These are big things that don't have a tremendous amount of precedent. So,
if you want to see an example of how it works when everybody tries to get together and figure out on the right way to do stuff, pull up videos of Occupy Wall Street and watch the little group meetings of people trying to decide who gets to talk and in what order.
Oh yeah. Like it's Robert's Rules of Order as done by like the characters, not the actors of like the Rent, but with ADD.
And it's people with very good intentions, very, very good intentions, and who feel like they sat down thinking, we're all on the same page here, right? And then, no, we're not. We're not. And I will turn over the talking stick now. Any picks?
Yeah, do we have picks?
Yeah, you guys go first. Someone goes first.
All right. My pick is the. Oh well, you want to? All right, here's a little wellness pick for you. To go along with my water pick last week.
It was not a water pick.
No, I picked water.
You picked water.
Free, by the way, still free water. Well, you can. So I got a smart scale.
Oh,
Did the Selfish Ledger print this out for
Weight
you?
Gurus is the brand. But you can sync it up with your phone, and it's just another way to kind of keep data. I have been very critical as Andrew laughs at me and my vulnerability.
I'm just like, I need another thing to tell me I'm fat. You know, like push notification. Yep, still fat. Okay, thanks.
It's
thanks.
not that. It's not that. Although certainly that would be the parody of it. No, I mean it's just been helpful as I've gotten back from recovering from the back injury. Like I'm now more into kind of a full tilt kind of workout regime like I was before I got injured, and it has been helpful to at least keep track and like anybody who's working out, you see trends, and it's helpful to kind of see those things in stark relief. And it was easier for me to be able to have it be kind of not thinking about it tracked than having to remember in my head, oh yeah, well, what was I yesterday, and what am I tomorrow, and if that's a thing that you're looking to do, then I've enjoyed it.
how if this is not too personal, how often are you weighing
How
yourself?
fat are you?
No,
Once in the morning. I'll do it at the same time in the morning, so at the very least I can kind of keep a baseline.
okay.
And I have lost 3 pounds. Thank you.
So
Since when I bought the scale like 2 weeks ago.
and like, how often are you checking the app? Like, is it
Just when I weigh myself. I'll
Just
look
once
when
a-
I weigh myself, and that's it.
okay?
But then it also, I guess it does also kick into Health Kit, the Apple thing. So I guess it could theoretically feed into other stuff if I wanted it to, but I don't really want it to right now.
Cool.
Yeah, I am a big believer in weighing yourself a lot. Like I have a scale in my hallway, and so I weigh myself a couple times a day because I try to get that range of stuff. Because the problem is people, if you're a male who weighs 190, your average weight, you can lose. I can have a 7-pound fluctuation. If I go from being super dehydrated to drinking a lot, then eating a lot in a day or whatever, I can have a wild variation. A lot of the problems people have is like, I've been on my diet a week, I lost 2 pounds. Like, how often do you weigh? How do you know? It's 2 hours hard to know, because it's like it's 2 big gulps,
relative,
and that's
yeah.
the problem is, people often have very bad data, and the more used to you are to getting a lot of data. And I think a smart scale is a good idea because it'll help you figure out if you're having trouble figuring out that trend or you want someone to keep track of it. Totally agree. Totally think it could be very useful because a lot of people have a very naive assumption about how much their weight naturally fluctuates. They think maybe a pound or 2, but they don't realize that, you just had 8 bottles of water. And what's that? Yeah.
It has been a good step toward weight loss. Not as effective as having your friend laugh at you during your mentioning of it, but
No.
it's still a step in the right
Oh
direction.
my goodness.
I was thinking more from my point of view, of if I had a scale, like my fear of just, notifications, more notifications to depress me.
Sure, that's exactly how I read it.
I don't even know. I had a birthday weekend. I ate a lot of cake, ate a lot of pizza, ate a lot of things, and I was coming back from being like one of the most fit points in my life, and then all of a sudden just wrecked all of that. So
No, I was the reason why I was down like 7 pounds, and then I wound up going to like watch the basketball game, and I like ate wings, and I've been trying to stay away from beer, but I drank beer, and the next thing you know, boom.
Those 7 pounds
It's
of beer.
5 pounds just. race.
I have a pick.
Go.
All right.
There's a new podcast. There's only one episode out. It also looks like they are only doing episodes once a month. Called Dark Ages, and it is a fictional dramedy that takes place inside of a museum in a high fantasy world. And so you follow the staff of the Museum of Mostly Natural Histories as they are preparing for their new big exhibit. And you learn about, you get a good sense of all the different characters, and they all have their own individual voices, and there's a good chemistry between them. It's really well scripted and written. And the production value on it is very good. A lot of great sound design that goes into it in terms of music, sound effects, mixing. I think it's really cool, and it's brand new, so I want to give them a bump as much as I can help them out. You can get it at darkagesshow.com, or if you look up Dark Ages, you'll probably be able to find it on your podcast catchers. I don't know. There are not very many drama, scripted audio plays, basically, that I listen to, but I really like this. So
It's
Nice.
great premise. Great premise.
yeah.
So my pick is I read this week the Intuition Pumps by Daniel Dennett, and maybe I'll talk on this another show. But did I tell you my whole experiment of just using a Kindle and taking that around, like if I'm in the restroom or laying in bed or whatever?
Yeah.
That was your pick last week, I believe.
That's been working out really well. I've been reading way more than I've read, probably read more, in the last week and a half, the last 2 weeks, than I probably have in the last 6 months.
Wow.
As far as actual reading.
Mhm.
So it's been a wonderful, wonderful use of my time, was just get a dedicated device, to read with, and take that with me when I'm in the smallest room in the house, or I'm just sitting in bed, and instead of reaching for the phone or the tablet and surfing for the news and the same sites over and over again, just read a book. So Intuition Pumps by Daniel Dennett. It's a book about, Daniel Dennett's a wonderfully amazing philosopher. I've always been a big fan of his. He talks about a lot of things about understanding consciousness. He makes very good arguments to explain consciousness. Intuition Pumps comes from, here are ways to sort of thinking puzzles or exercises or things to look at arguments, ways to form them or whatever, how to analyze some other arguments from other people. And, he has his critics, and he, dispatches with their arguments, and he makes the case for his view of consciousness, of which I agree with. To me, it makes sense to me, his theory on artificial intelligence, et cetera, whatever. I find that there's a lot of overlap. And that was one of the things I realized early on was, I would read several people individually who weren't, coming from a body of, like on consciousness. I'd read Daniel Dennett, go, man, this guy makes a lot of sense. And then I'd go pick up Richard Dawkins and let's say Stephen Jay Gould. I'm like, man, I like Dawkins more than Gould's approach towards this. And then I'd find out that Dennett and Dawkins, there was an overlap there, that there was like, yes, this is compatible with this. And then I'd pick up like Steven Pinker, and I'd be like, wow, there's a compatibility here between these, and like Matt Ridley. And even though individually I realized, wow, these people all have independently come to some of the same points of view, and then have actually shared some perspectives on stuff. And so Daniel Dennett's a person that if you like Richard Dawkins and you like Steven Pinker, you'll probably like him a lot. And then if you like Matt Ridley, for that. So, but I'll tell you, the funny thing though is that I can, politically speaking, you could see where some of these people, how these beliefs may manifest in current events will be very, very different, which to be explained. But from a psychological or looking at how the world works point of view, I think it's very interesting. So
Cool.
Intuition
Nice.
Pumps, highly recommend it. Really good explanation of some of the rudiments of consciousness.
Wow.
So that's my pick. I guess that's it. It's been after.
Cool. Hey, good shows today, guys.
Yeah, man. Happy Memorial Day.
Memorial Day.
Alrighty. Well, we're gonna call it here. Everybody have a happy rest of your Memorial Day. Drink
Yay.
responsibly. And we'll talk to you guys later. No cord killers this week. So, heads up.
Night Attack, probably.
Yeah, Night Attack should be at.
Attack is still on.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Bye,
See
everybody.
ya.